For the past few months, Iran has managed again to become one of the hot topics in international arena, both for its internal dynamics and geopolitical developments, as Tehran had unexpectedly gotten involved in the war in Ukraine. My name is Rusif Huseynov. I'm from Topchubashov Center, and today I'm going to discuss the Iran-related issues with my guest, Mr. Alex Vatanka, the founding director of the Iran program at the Middle East Institute and one of the most prominent experts on the region. Mr. Vatanka, thank you for finding time for this interview. Saluting you from Baku. I hope you're fine.
I'm okay. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Vatanka, let's try to focus mostly on geopolitical issues around Iran. We had used to see, study, and analyze Iran mainly in the Middle Eastern context, but its military penetration, if I may say so, into the bloody conflict in Ukraine has raised both interest and criticism against Iran from a new angle now. How does the Iranian regime perceive the Russian-Ukraine war? And does the drone deal between Iran and Russia is just business and nothing personal, or could stem out of some geopolitical and ideological calculations?
Well, thank you for that question. I think there are a number of factors here to keep in mind. Number one is Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is a man who has a foreign policy vision in which he believes the Western world is in decline and the East is rising. For him, the East means China, but also Russia. So what Khamenei has in mind isn't necessarily money or any other short-term material gain from working with Russia. You asked me about the drones. To be honest, I don't know how much money Russia is going to give Iran for these drones. This is not a commercial calculation that Khamenei has made. Khamenei has made a geopolitical and ideological calculation. He wants to be with what he calls the East. He wants to side with countries that Khamenei and his regime, the Islamic Republic, believes are like-minded on how to confront the West and principally the United States. So that's the logic. Otherwise, you know, Iran is intervening on the side of Russia in a war in Ukraine, which happens to be a war that the majority of Iranian public opinion is against the Russian intervention. So Khamenei is not reflecting the people's wishes, that of his country. He's not reflecting national interest of Iran. There's no money really to be had. He's making a big, as I said, geopolitical gamble to side with Putin. And we have to remember, Khamenei has known Vladimir Putin for 22 years. This is a very close personal relationship they have. And he would rather please the Russians than worry about if he upsets the Western world by giving these drones to Russia, which he has done. And he seems to be happy to deal with the criticism that he has received for doing so.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Vatanka. Interestingly enough, Iran, like as we discuss now, is kind of part of this post-Soviet war in Ukraine, and there is also another region, also in the post-Soviet space, South Caucasus, which is like boiling. Since the end of the Second Karabakh War 2 years ago, the tensions have risen between Azerbaijan and Iran to what some people say to an unprecedented level. Open and indirect threats against Baku, full support to Armenia, Azerbaijan's arch nemesis, and most recently large-scale military drills of the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps near the Azerbaijan border. Of course, the authorities in Baku also try to respond their own way, but today we are focusing mostly on the geopolitical vision of the Iranian authorities. So two questions arise in this regard. What has served as a trigger for these current tensions, and what does the Iranian side want as an end goal
Look, number one is Iran was surprised by the war of 2020. And there's a reason for that, because the Iranian regime has invested most of its energy in the Arab world in places like Syria and Iraq over the last 2 decades almost, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen. As a result of being distracted, the Iranians were hugely surprised when the war over Karabakh happened in 2020. And they were equally dismayed by the fact that Turkey and Israel were the major partners of Azerbaijan in that military conflict. Turkey and Israel certainly are seen by Tehran as regional rivals. So to your question about what is it that Iran was surprised about or angry about, well, there are two elements here. One is Iran's regional rivals are suddenly having a bigger presence to Iran's immediate north. This is a concern for Iran. The Iranians also believe that also to some extent maybe the Turks might look to the South Caucasus as a region from which they can create instability inside of Iran as part of the regional rivalry. You have to remember there are 20 million more, perhaps, ethnic Azerbaijanis that live in Iran. So if you are Tehran, you're concerned about how other rival actors might look for ways to create instability. Now, is Israel doing that? Is Turkey doing that? Probably, certainly not to the extent that the Iranian regime says they are, but it's certainly an opportunity for them. And you have seen in recent weeks the unrest inside of Iran. So Iranian population is very angry about the way they live, the way they're ruled, the state of their economy. We've seen unrest among ethnic minorities, including Azerbaijanis in Iran. So for these factors combined, internal realities, but also Iran having to worry about its foreign rivals, make the South Caucasus a particularly sensitive area. In terms of what Iran wants, at the very least, what they don't want is to lose the border they have with Armenia. Right now, as you know, Azerbaijan and Turkey and others are in the discussion of how to create regional interconnected economic routes and how to bring about permanent peace. And one idea that certainly Iran seems to take seriously is that there will be a corridor connecting the Republic of Azerbaijan to the exclave of Nakhchivan, and that would go through what is modern day state of Armenia, and that happens to be Iran's border with Armenia. So the Iranians have come out and said, this is our red line. We do not want to lose our border with Armenia. And I think to your point about the military drills, the Revolutionary Guards, Iran is saying, we will take action if necessary. So it's part of the posturing and the brinkmanship that has been going on in the last 2 years by Iran and other countries like Turkey and Azerbaijan, as you pointed out.
A couple of days ago, mass media leaked allegedly Saudi intel's information on Iran's intentions to attack Saudi Arabia. So the regime in Tehran has accumulated quite vast an experience in conducting proxy wars in the Middle Eastern countries. Do you expect a new war or a new front to be opened with Iran's direct involvement this time?
One of the reasons why Iranian public opinion is so angry with the regime is because of what they have done in terms of their regional policies. Look, when you support proxy groups in the region, you create unease among your neighboring states. You also create unease on the international stage. So what Iranian policies have done in the Middle East is that they have mobilized a good part of the international community against Iran, which has resulted in sanctions, which in turn has made the economic situation in Iran that much worse. So the proxy model, I know some people like to say the proxy model is a good, cheap way of waging war. But, yes, it's cheaper than conventional military campaigns. But the reality is, as of today, Iran right now, even though it has extended its influence to many theaters in the Arab world, economically, it hasn't really benefited from what I can see from its interventions. And you could also argue that its security has not really been secured. Iranian national security hasn't really benefited much. What has benefited is Iran's ideological reach into the Arab world. But the question then becomes, what price do you pay to export your ideology or to advance your ideological interest? And this is where you have a major split inside the country of Iran, between the leadership that is willing to pay a very heavy price for its use of proxies and what it calls revolutionary foreign policy, and the Iranian people, which by and large, as you see in the protest movement today, are against such interventions. So again, to your question, will Iran be able to use this proxy model in the future? Very much depends on opportunities that might present themselves. Iran does not have the ability to go to a country that is at peace, that's functioning, and create a proxy. We haven't seen that happen. Iran goes to a country where there's chaos and instability, and there's a vacuum in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen. In all these cases where Iran has used the proxy model, there's been a vacuum. So unless there's vacuum, there is very little, I think, Iran can do. Say a country, the country of Jordan, the country of Turkmenistan. I'm just giving you some random examples. But if these countries remain where they are, Iran cannot just simply walk in and use local proxies to promote its whatever agenda it wants to promote. But if those countries end up in civil war, there's political instability, there's vacuum, then Iran has a proven record in being able to show up and cultivate local actors to fight on its side.
Mr. Vatanka, let me ask, since you stated the public inside of Iran is tired of and discontent with the current regime and its policies, do you think this present policy of brinkmanship could also be designed in order to somehow, conduct this policy rally around the flag and somehow distract the public attention from the domestic problems? That every time a new wave of tensions with another neighboring country that would consolidate the domestic support to the current regime in Iran.
Let me make a historical comparison. When the revolution happened in Iran in 1979, there was a political instability in Iran. There was much political competition and fights going on among the various groups that took over Iran right after the fall of the Shah. And as soon as Saddam Hussein invaded in September of 1980, you saw the country, as you put it, rally around the flag. But here's the problem for the regime in Iran today. It's no longer 1980, it's 2022. And for 43 years, the Iranian people have come to realize that oftentimes it's the policies of Ayatollah Khamenei and the Revolutionary Guards, which are the reason for neighboring states adopting a hostile posture towards Iran. It's not the Iranian nation they fear, it's the ideology of the Islamic Republic they fear. And if that is true, which I think is the case, then I do not see how Iranian people today will come back and repeat what happened in 1980 when Saddam invaded. So in other words, no, I do not think the regime can play the nationalist card. I do not think the regime can ask the people to rally around the flag, because the people hold the regime responsible for the state of affairs in Iranian foreign policy and why the country is feared, why the country is isolated, and the solution, at least that's what the protesters in Iran are demanding, the solution is a change of Iran's posture, regional strategy, and again, focusing on promoting Iranian national interest and not promoting necessarily the militant Islamist ideology of Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader.
I see. Mr. Vatanka, last but not least, US President Joe Biden made a controversial comment recently by saying Iran will be freed. So you're joining the program from Washington D.C. So I cannot help but ask, what is the Biden administration's Iran strategy regarding the nuclear deal, domestic unrest in Iran, or Iran affairs in general? Should we like take these recent comments seriously, or?
Look, I don't think one should necessarily think the comment Iran will be free reflects a entirely new approach by the Biden White House. It doesn't mean that, you know, they're busy trying to come up with a plan to remove the Islamic Republic. What he says is a reflection of the reality. There are hundreds and thousands of people every day for the last 7 weeks in the streets, in towns and cities across Iran, demanding for this Islamic Republic to go. So Biden basically said that he can see what's going on, like we all can see what's going on. But does it mean that they are going to bring about regime change? Is the United States going to start a new campaign with that policy objective in mind? As I said, I don't think that's the case, but it could become the case, because here's what the US needs to figure out. The United States has a lot of different concerns about the actions and behavior of the Islamic Republic. The most important one, its nuclear program, which is a concern. So the United States, particularly this Biden White House, right now has the challenge how to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear weapon state, but without reaching a diplomatic solution with Khamenei that would empower him and weaken the opposition. This is the challenge for the Biden White House. It's not an easy obstacle. It's not an easy, policy to put together, because as you can imagine, there are competing interests here. But what I think is happening, and you asked me because I'm in Washington, what I think is happening in this town is there's a convergence, a slow but nonetheless a convergence of an opinion that says the long-term investment by United States when it comes to Iran should be in the Iranian people, not in the Iranian regime, because the Iranian regime clearly is not liked. It's on borrowed time. Khamenei is 83. He will leave soon. So how can the United States, in its long-term policy of bringing Iran back into the family of nations, how can the United States help that opposition find its voice, express its voice, communicate to the world freely, and in the hope that soon it's the people of Iran that will be in charge essentially of running their own country, as opposed to the small group of Islamists today that run Iran and do things as they wish without really taking into account the demands, the aspirations of their own people. So that's what the challenge is for the Biden administration. Look, it's early days. We're 7 weeks into these protests. They could go on for weeks more, for months more. But I think everyone has now seen the reality. The Islamic Republic, it's not popular with the Iranian people, and it's a question of time before it goes.
I see. Thank you very much for the informative discussion, Mr. Vatanka. I appreciate your time.